All right, good morning, you function mathematicians. We are starting a new unit today. It is Unit 2 Functions. So in your notes, go ahead and write this down. Hit pause and do that. So this is going to be a quick introduction into functions. We're going to talk a lot about domain and range. In your notes, you don't necessarily need to put this function machine in, but I would put that your domain are going to be your x values or your inputs, and that your range are going to be your y values or your outputs. And when you put in, so if we have a rule of f of x is equal to, say, 2x, and we put an input of, let's do 3. If I put in 3 into this function, I get 2 times 3, which gives me an output of 6. So for every one input, I only get one output. It can't mean that 3 can equal 2 different numbers. It means that it equals one output. So that is the biggest thing that you need to remember, and we're going to go on to the next thing. So make sure you get that in your notes. So we're going to determine if these relations define a function, and we're going to state the domain and range. You might not have seen things like this before. You may have in Delta Math and Algebra 2. When we're looking at this, these are different points on a graph. So this is our x and our y, and that is the case for all of them. To state the domain and range with these curly brackets, we're going to do it like this. So we're going to do domain, and we're going to use a curly bracket. And we're always going to start it that way. If we're given curly brackets, we're going to put our answer in curly brackets. So what we're going to do is domain relates to all of our x values. I'm going to write my smallest x value in this list, and then my next one. And I see -1, -1, and 0. And -1 is repeated, and I only need to write it one time. So, and it is my smallest one. So I'm going to write that. I'm going to separate it with a comma, and then 0 is my next one. So now when I'm looking at this, and I'm going to close it with curly brackets. So now when I'm looking at this, I see all my x values are stated in here, and I only have the one, I have any repeats only one time. We're going to do the same thing for range. So we're going to do a curly bracket, and I have 2 and 3, and 2 is my smallest, and 3 is repeated, so I'm only going to write it one time. Now we're going to find out and look at this. Looking at that, I'm not 100% sure if this is a function. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to graph it really quick. If I draw a graph, I have -1. So my first point is 0, 3. So I'm going to go 0 up 3. It's 1 point. I have -1, 2, and -1, 3. So now if I'm looking at that graph, if I draw an imaginary line anywhere through here, if I hit any 2 points, then it can't be a function. And the reason why that is it doesn't pass that vertical line test. So no, this relation is not a function. No, not a function. Oops, that was the word. Because it doesn't pass the vertical line test. So on your test, BLT. So on your test, I'm going to expect that you say, no, not a function, because it doesn't pass the vertical line test. Or you could put VLT. In your notes, I would write all of this and the abbreviation so that when you look back in a couple of weeks when we take the test, you'll be able to remember what VLT stands for. It is very important that you put vertical line test and not just line test, because later on in the semester we will be learning another one. So what I would like everyone to do is I would like you to do B on your own. Try it out. Okay, so I went ahead and did B. In my domain, I have 5, 6, and 7. I separated all of them with commas, and I stated all of them because none of them were repeated. And I started with a curly bracket, and I ended with a curly bracket. My range was 4. It only went up to 4. I only stated it once because it's repeated 3 times. And then I wasn't 100% sure, since the y's were repeated, if it was a function, so I went ahead and graphed it. Well, look at this. No matter where I put my pencil, it passes the vertical line test. I only go through 1 point. So yes, this is a function. It passes VLT, the vertical line test. So go ahead and get that in your notes. Make any changes that you didn't have on there. Make any notes of things that I said that made you think, because we want to make sure our notes are something we can look back on and reflect on later in the semester. So now we're going to look at something called mapping, and this might be brand new to you. So basically we're going to determine the domain and range and whether the relation is a function. So when we're looking at this, everything on your left side are going to be your inputs, and those are going to be your x values. Everything on your right side are going to be your outputs and your y values. When you're looking at mapping, the arrows tell you what they belong to. They're not necessarily straight. You need to follow the arrow. So do you remember when you were in elementary school and you would match things and it could be diagonal, sideways, straight across? This one happens to be straight across, but it doesn't always have to be. So if I were thinking of these as an ordered pair, 1 maps to 2, so then my ordered pair would be 1, 2. And the same for 2 maps to 5, so my ordered pair would be 2, 5. We're going to talk about this one in a minute, but I want everyone to put these in your notes, so take a couple seconds, jot these down in your notes, and we'll keep going. So hit pause. So we're going to determine the domain, and we're going to write it the same way we did before. We're going to do those curly brackets, and I'm going to list them smallest to largest. And the reason why we list them smallest to largest is because when we do interval notation, we're going to list our smallest value first, then our largest possible value. So to keep it consistent, we're going to go ahead and just do it always smallest to largest. So my smallest possible x value in this relation is 1, and then I have 2, and then I have 3. And I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And then my range is going to be curly bracket, I have 2, 5, and 6. So I have everything listed, and now if I were to graph this, because I'm not sure, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, so my first one is 1, 2, so I go to 1, up 2. The second one is 2, 5, so I go over 1, up 5, and then 3, 6. So no matter where I put my pencil, I can't draw a line, a vertical line, that goes through 2 points. So yes, this is a function. It passes the vertical line test. So I'm going to go ahead and put that. So now what I would like you to do is I would like you to try this one. I've written out the points already so that they map. So you can see here that 2 maps to 2 here, and it maps to 6. So we need to determine whether or not this is going to be a function, and we're going to state the domain and range. So go ahead and hit pause and do that. Okay, so when we're looking at this one, I have my domain, which is going to be the values on my left side are 1 and 2. My range is 2 and 6. And this is not a function because it doesn't pass the vertical line test. I went ahead and graphed it, and I have 1, 2 right here, and I have 2, 2 right here, and then I have 2, 6 right here. So right here, if I put my pencil, right there, I go through 2 points at one time. It is very crucial that I put that it does not pass the vertical line test. Okay, so now we're going to look at them graphically, and I'd like to show that this parabola right here ends at negative 3, 5, and 3, 5. Those are closed, they're not arrows. So if we were to state the domain and range, it's kind of like cropping a picture. That's the way I think of it. So if I'm thinking about my domain, and I were going to crop this picture as close to where the x values end, I would put that. So my domain, and I'm going to do this in interval notation, my smallest possible value is going to be negative 3, and my largest possible x value is going to be positive 3, because it's not going to go beyond that if I were to cut that picture. So if I were to do that, and these holes are filled in, so I'm going to have the squared off brackets. And I know that this is review from last year, but it's always good to review. Then my range, again, if I were to crop a picture, I would crop it right here, and I would crop it right there. So now, if I'm cropping this picture of my graph, and I only have where it hits, my smallest possible y value is going to be negative 3, and my largest possible y value is 5. Again, it's solid. There's no hole there. Even though it passes right through there, a point does exist there, and a point exists here, and a point exists here. Because remember, when we draw a line in a graph, those are just little points all connecting really, really close together. So then they are included. So I'm going to go ahead and do square brackets. Now, if I were to do that vertical line test, if I were to draw a line any place, any vertical line, I would only hit one part of the graph. So yes, this is a function, passes the vertical line test. So I go ahead and have that. I would like you to try B and C on your own. C is a little weird and B is a little weird. So go ahead and try those and then check your answers with me. Okay, so I went ahead and did B and C. My domain for this one was -3. So again, if I were to crop this picture as close to the graph as I could, I'd stop at -3 and I'd go all the way to +3. And then again for my range, I'd go at -3 and all the way to +3. So then I'm cropping that picture just so I can only see my graph. It is not a function, because if I were to draw a line, how about right here, I'd hit 2 points in that graph right there. So you can see that. So it does not pass the vertical line test. And then this one is a little interesting because these do have arrows. So my domain, this is going to go forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So it's going to go all the way to -infinity. And because we can never actually reach -infinity, I'm going to use that curved bracket or my parenthesis. Fun fact, they don't use the word parenthesis in Ireland. And so when I was teaching this there, I would say parenthesis and they didn't know what that was. They call it a curved bracket. Okay, so again, this is going to go forever to -infinity. And then it's going to keep going positive forever and ever and ever and ever to +infinity. And again, we can never reach infinity, so we're going to have that parenthesis. My range, it's going down forever. So as the x's become more negative, so do the y's. As the x's become more positive, the y's become more negative. So it's going to go down to -infinity, and I'm going to have that parenthesis right there. But it goes only up to 4. It won't go past the y-axis on 4. It's going to stop. And it's a closed dot, so that means that I'm going to have my bracket because it's also included in this graph. And yes, this is a function because no matter where I put my pencil, I only hit 1 point in the graph. So it passes the vertical line test. So make sure you get this in your notes. If you like my video, go ahead and hit subscribe, hit the like button. I don't know, all those YouTubers do it, so I'm going to do this every time. So go ahead and do that. I hope you have a great day. If you are not in our online book, please reach out to me so I can get you the access code because you have homework you need to do 1 through 8. Thank you so much.